For far too long, I thought this is what it meant to be adulting. I thought this was motherhood. If our attention repetitively moves towards responsibility, responsibility can begin to look like the thing that's most important in the room. Welcome to Reweaving Systems from Nervous to Regulated. I'm Jana Shalom, educator, system weaver, and our full-time master regulator. This is not a podcast. This is an attunement lab. Here we move through a living sequence, a truth, a pause, a moment of bracing, and a breath that brings us back. We name the nervous system, Shalom, as companion. We name survival responses as intelligent. And we open the sanctuary door from the inside. Nothing needs fixing. Welcome to the sanctuary. Let the weaving begin. This is Reweaving Systems from Nervous to Regulated. I'm Jana Shalom, and you're listening to Season 1, The Sanctuary. We are in the final segment of The Sanctuary. This is Arc 3, The Return of Perception. This is the new moon, where something begins to come into view for us to finally notice. This episode is called, What Survival Asked Us to See. A few years ago, I started noticing something. I'd walk through the front door after a long day of work, and before my purse was even sat down on the counter, my mind was already moving forward. What's for dinner? What do the kids need help with for their homework? Oh, I need to make sure I empty their backpacks and sign any permission slips that there are. Thinking of permission slips, my son has a field trip tomorrow. Did I take $5 out of the ATM? All of these things are coming into mind quickly. Do I even have anything for dinner? I open the fridge, and as I look in, I realize, no, I don't have anything for dinner. And my children are bringing me all of the projects to show me. They're so excited, the work that they've done throughout the week. And as they're emptying their backpacks and I'm looking at the homework I need to help them with, the reading logs that need to be signed, the lunches that need to be packed for tomorrow, all I kept thinking is I didn't even stop at the ATM yet. I haven't responded to anything that's actually happened. There's a parent email from today that requires my attention that I haven't answered. I need to set up physicals for the boys because sports are right around the corner. And by judging by how my two middle children are looking at each other, clearly something has gone awry in between me entering the home and all of these thoughts that are now processing. All of this happens in seconds. The boys taking off their shoes, their backpacks landing on the floor, someone trying to tell me about their day. And all while this is occurring, I realize I'm only half listening. My attention has been moving. What do I think I need to focus on right away? To, oh my goodness, I need to remember how to plan what's coming up. To, wait a minute, this requires my attention immediately and I have to stop all thoughts. The awareness was already coming into focus. The awareness that the future is more important than what's actually happening in front of me, even though the future hasn't even arrived yet. While my body is physically standing there in the kitchen, my attention is focused on tomorrow. For far too long, I thought this was adulthood. I thought this is what it meant to be adulting. I thought this was motherhood. In all of this thinking, I realized I thought I was being responsible. And I've come to understand that simply keeping track of tasks is not actually what responsibility is. I was tracking things that needed to be tracked. I was looking for things that needed my help, but my attention was moving further and further and further away from what was standing right in front of me, because my awareness did not have a chance to notice where I actually was. And as I started to pay attention to this pattern, I became really curious about something. Why does my attention always seem to move in the same direction? Why am I always focused on dinner? Why am I always worried about the homework? Why am I always anticipating all of the things that might need to happen, the things that need to be scheduled, the tension between siblings, the responsibilities that need to be fixed prior to tomorrow's arrival? Why is that where my brain shifts its attention to? And over time, I became aware of something. My eyes know exactly where to go, except only not mine. It's ours. I walk into the room and my eyes are not just worried about myself. I'm noticing who's upset. I open an inbox of my email to read something and I immediately spot the email that requires my immediate response. I sit down at the end of the day and my mind begins going through all of the things that I might have forgotten. And then I ruminate on the shift in someone's tone. I think about repetitively about the thing that somebody brought to my attention that needed to be solved right away. And these are the things that are occupying my mind space. What needs attention? What might need caring? Who might need my help? And while all of these thoughts are happening, there's this natural movement towards noticing and reacting in the exact same space. I become aware, and now I move towards fixing. The things that I used to scan for began to feel obvious. Responsibility feels obvious. Tension feels obvious. The urgency is obviously there. And other people's needs are obviously far more important than any of my own. Our attention follows familiar pathways, much like our feet follow a familiar route. Through a dark house that we've walked through many of times, we know where's the thing we have to make sure we don't stub our toe on. Even though we don't have a physical map in front of us, we've traveled that path so often that our eyes have learned how to navigate it without actually looking at it. And this is very familiar with a lot of the thoughts that ruminate through our mind throughout the days. When something feels very obvious for a very, very long time, we stop experiencing it as a pattern because we've come to expect that this is what's going to happen. We begin experiencing our reality, not necessarily as where it is, but where our eyes think we need to go. So instead of being with what's in front of us, we're always a few steps ahead. Oftentimes, this is learned through relationships. It's learned through depending on experiences that taught us how other people might show up for us. Those experiences lend into the way that we react during certain situations, and it lends in what we notice about ourselves. It lends into what we can pick up on that other people are sharing with us, the look on their face, the energy of the room, the shifting tone of the atmosphere. This is the difference between a good day and a hard day. It's the difference when there's a moment where someone in front of me might need support, they might need space, and I can actually be there for them right here in this moment. Knowing what to say. And a lot of times knowing what to say feels really, really wise. But knowing what to say doesn't necessarily mean we are saying things that are helping the person feel safe. A lot of times we're just reacting out of previous experiences. And many times that reacting follows the same type of pattern. Everything's going to be okay, just calm down. No formal instruction needed. Human beings, we are remarkably skilled at these experiences. Over time, we've gathered lots of information. That information tells us where our attention actually matters. We recognize patterns, we create connections through those patterns, and we create tension through those connective patterns. We lean into what receives approval. We lean into what provides disappointment. What actually brings us closer and what pushes somebody else away. Little by little, our attention begins to organize around things that seem important, things that seem like they need our noticing. And oftentimes this includes things like someone else's mood. For some of us, it's noticing the expectations that others have placed on us. It's noticing what others need from us. And it's noticing that oftentimes this is happening all at once. Eventually, we begin paying attention to something much more automatic. We anticipate, we prepare. We read the room, and we are thinking 3 steps ahead. We notice shifts before anyone else has to say a word. Because we are so used to knowing what this typically requires from us. We track what other people may forget. And from the outside, people describe these qualities as responsibility, as competence, as awareness, as thoughtfulness, even as, wait, this person is a helper. This is the type of person we can look to. But sometimes beneath all of those patterns, there's something fundamentally happening. Survival directed our attention. Survival taught us what was to be important and what was to be let go of. It taught us what required our attention, and we became highly, highly skilled at people-pleasing, at reducing pressure for other people, at following other people's expectations of us. And over time, that responsibility required something of us. It required our attention to the point where things became so natural, our reactions felt like familiar patterns. And instead of making conscious choices, we're just responding to the next thing in front of us or what our mind is anticipating might be in front of us. It's important for us to understand that survival doesn't shape just what we do. Survival shapes the way we look at things. Survival shapes what we choose to spend our attention on. And survival shapes our energy. It shapes our energy in terms of accommodating someone else. And we become really, really good at this. So good at this that we become the person that people really turn to. And that sense of usefulness feels like belonging. But it's not true belonging. It's survival-based belonging. And there can be grief in naming that. There can be grief in naming that, wait a minute, if I don't make the appointment, if I don't sign the permission slip, if I don't do this thing, it's going to fall through the cracks and it's not going to get done. And over time, that constant paying attention has shaped us. It has shaped us into living lives that are relying on urgency and productivity. It's relying on that because that's where we're finding our usefulness. But oftentimes, to other people, it looks as something to aspire to be dependable, thoughtful, and organized, to be prepared. We aspire to be like that person. But we have to ask, one, how did those patterns form? And two, what have those patterns cost us? Because oftentimes those patterns have cost us our genuineness. It's cost us the strength in what our real gifts are in this life, because we're just being useful. We're just part of a moving piece. Yet beneath that surface, there are so many qualities in us that are not yet developed from the survival state. We've been too busy paying attention to staying a few steps ahead, to anticipating the next thing that needs our attention. Being prepared is important, and these are skills that we need, but we need to stop confusing survival strategies with productivity and urgency, because oftentimes they're born from the exact same field. I notice for me, this has made it difficult to slow down. It's made it difficult for me to even remember everyday things because there's so many things filling my mind. And I have a tendency to push past every physical sign my body is giving me, telling me that it's time to rest. Because nowhere in the situation was rest ever allowed. In fact, I will take it so far to say rest interfered with all it was that I needed to hold. How could I rest and hold all of this at the same time? Many of us have spent years rewarded for living inside of these patterns. People trust us, people lean on us, people rely on us. And we want to be those types of people. But oftentimes what happens is when the survival strategies start coming into view and we start disconnecting our worth from our usefulness, other people's expectations of us are still there. They still expect us to handle it all. They still expect us to keep going, to keep showing up. All of those expectations are there because it's a worn route. People have walked this time and time again. They don't magically dissipate because we now have an awareness of something. I state that because there can be grief in the space of identifying that wait a minute, people really, really look to me when I can hold it all. And yet, when I'm struggling to hold it all and I reach out for help, they then look at that as a sign of like, now I'm not capable. Now I'm not dependable. Now I'm not reliable. When in truth, I'm working through structures that created an identity from survival. And I have spent years being extraordinarily skilled at staying in motion while unraveling all of this. And none of that means there's something wrong with me. It does mean that I really had to look at my survival patterns and how they were influencing how I was showing up and who I am in this life. And this is the really interesting thing about our attention. As our attention begins to move into something new, new things begin appearing. Things that I didn't have time to actually look at because my mind was ruminating on all of these other things. I could walk through the front door and notice that my children seemed to be upset. Yet I could not look in the mirror and tell you what was happening in my own inner world because I did not give attention to myself the way I gave attention to everything else. Each one of these things seems small on its own. Yet awareness has a way of accumulating one thought after another. One responsibility quickly can turn into 3. One open tab can quickly turn into 20. And long before we even realize that this is a pattern moving through our life, we arrange our life around it. I want to state that just noticing it does not necessarily resolve this tension. But what it does is it allows something else possible to come into view. That maybe underneath survival, there is something else, something that might require a different use of my energy, something that might require a different type of monitoring. And sometimes in that loosening, we begin to see patterns that we no longer wish to carry forward with us. And that can include, I don't want to hold everything. I don't want to remember everything. I don't want to track everything. I don't want to carry everything. And knowing that carrying things in and of themselves is heavy. The constant tracking is heavy. Even the thinking about it is a form of work. If our attention repetitively moves towards responsibility, responsibility can begin to look like the thing that's most important in the room. And if we repetitively move to solving things quickly, then that becomes our reaction. We need to solve this quickly. Sometimes just naming these things can help us begin to unravel the knot that has confused survival patterns for personality traits. I think back on those years when my children were younger, and I think back on those evenings, and I can see myself holding all of that weight. The dinner, the homework, the reading log, the tensions between siblings. And knowing that my capacity was limited because I was not able to be fully present. I was not able to share in their laughter in the ways that I would have wanted to. We begin recognizing that what captures our energy isn't entirely what's fully present. And perhaps this is where we begin restoring our perception of understanding that survival has impacted our behaviors and our responses. Nothing needs to be threaded any further than it has today. As we enter the first quarter moon, something continues. Our eyes learn where to go. Our attention follows. And over time, what we repetitively notice, we begin to feel like truth. We'll walk this together during our next episode. What survival asked us to believe. The loom is quiet. The thread holds. And the loom remains.